I'm Professor Gordon Carlson. I'm a professor in communication studies. I'm also the director of the Institute for New Media Studies here on campus. As part of the Institute, we're trying once a month to bring interesting and innovative speakers to campus to talk about the intersection of new technology and new media with a lot of the social institutions or just common occurrences in everyday life. So we're looking at how these two things sort of interact with one another. Today we have a fantastic sort of first inaugural speaker to kick things off for us. We have Officer Mark Engholm. He's a member of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. I'm going to let him sort of give you his own background and introduce himself so that we can make sure we get everything right. We've got until 1. We can go longer than that. So definitely, feel free to stick around so we can have a discussion, ask questions, that sort of thing. And if there's anything you need from me or any questions you have about the speaker series or the Institute, I'll be right over there when it's over and I can answer any questions or help you out with anything. But without any further ado, I introduce Officer Mark Engholm.
I'm afraid you've been oversold. I'm neither interesting nor innovative, so we'll try to at least put up with each other for a little while here and go through this. My plan today kind of was to go through, first give you a little bit of an overview of what the FBI is, how the Joint Terrorism Task Force fits into the FBI, into our state, and then go from there into actually talking about the issues of newer technology, communications, the new media, and how our privacy is affected and how it's affecting law enforcement. This gets a little confusing, so I want to make sure you understand what my position is with the Bureau. I'm a task force officer, so basically that means that I'm on loan to the FBI. As a career, I'm a trooper with the Kansas Highway Patrol. I've been a trooper for 19 years. And as of January last year, was assigned on loan to the Bureau. Prior to that, my career's been very different than most troopers have had. Did work the road like any trooper out there you see on the highway, but also spent time as the legislative liaison for the Highway Patrol in Topeka. My background is a lot of it's public information where I was speaking to folks such as yourself or the media, and also a few years in working in intelligence before I did this. So I've had a lot of different opportunities to do different things. I love this. The Bureau's a great partner for us, and they treat us just like one of their own. So I really have enjoyed meeting some of the professors here today. Also, if you guys don't know, Bill Ring, who's over here, is your county emergency manager. He's a great resource for you, and a great for social media. We use him as an example all the time when we're teaching classes, so good guy. All right, so I'm going to try to go fairly quickly for these first few portions. It'll be a little bit more extemporaneous. Hopefully I can just talk. When we get into the communications portion, as I was telling Dr. Carlson, it'll be a little bit more scripted, but then I hope we can actually open it up and just have some question and answer session. There are things I can't talk about. There are classified matters, and matters are classified for a good reason. That's because it protects us from our adversaries. Okay? Anything to do with Mr. Snowden, as far as I've been told, none of that has been declassified. I can't speak about any of the things that he has allegedly released. I don't know if those are true or not or anything else, and I can't speak about them. So, but we'll kind of get into some of the other issues here, show you what's going on, okay? All right, so very quickly, the FBI mission statement, you can read it if you like. What's important about this is that we are an intelligence and a law enforcement agency. We are the domestic intelligence side of things, and we also handle law enforcement. We handle espionage, we handle counterterrorism. Okay? Those are our major areas. Local police handle crime. They handle your violent crimes, everything else. Very rarely do you see the FBI getting involved in those sort of things. It has to be a significant crime for us to do that. Our priority, number one, is to protect this country from terrorist attack. Number two is to stop foreign intelligence operations, and this is huge right now. I don't know if you saw that we just arrested 3 spies in New York City this week. Economic spies. And so spying has a huge area. It's not just breaking into some industrial plant and stealing defense information. It actually goes over huge areas of our society, including the research and development work you're doing here at the university. Any little bit of that can help some foreign government, some foreign company get a jump on U.S. companies and what we're doing here. Cyber is huge. It's not my area. If there's any computer science folks here who want to talk MD5 hashtags, I'm not the guy to do that. But that we do have plenty of people out there, and there are lots of positions available now in that area. It's a huge growing area. It's protecting our country from those outside this country who would like to take, steal, break things that we have here. Public corruption is huge. We love putting elected officials in jail. Okay, if they're bad, hey, I'm all for that any day. Love to see it. Civil rights cases. Then we get into further down the line, transnational criminal organizations. So your drug cartels, your mafia connections, major white-collar crime, significant violent crime, on and so forth, supporting local partners, that sort of thing. But you can kind of see where our priorities run and where they go down. Most of you probably think of, in watching the old movies and stuff, FBI is chasing bank robbers. That's actually a very small amount of what we do at the Bureau. Most of it has to do with the national security mission. Okay, kind of got ahead of myself here. So how do we do this? We have 56 field offices across the United States. Our field office that takes care of this area is based in Kansas City. There's also 400 resident agencies across. So I'm based out of the Topeka Resident Agency underneath Kansas City. We also have resident agents in Wichita and in Garden City. The Topeka office, where I'm at Joint Terrorism Task Force, we basically cover everything from here, from Hayes, all the way to Lawrence and kind of north to Nebraska. Wichita covers the southern part of the state. So occasionally I find myself out here working cases or looking things up, just trying to find out what's going on. LEGATs, great. But what's really important to understand is when we have these FBI agents in foreign countries, they are not doing investigations. We are not conducting investigations in foreign countries. These are simply ways that we can pass information to and from the security services or the police departments in those countries to U.S. law enforcement and queries from U.S. law enforcement to those services. There are roughly 35,000 employees in the FBI as of October. About 13,000 agents, a lot of support people. This goes all the way across from your administrative to your crime scene technicians to laboratory techs, cyber, intelligence analysts, that sort of thing. Just some quick facts. FBI has been around since 1908. It was originally formed as a national security agency, and in World War I was very big into counter-espionage. Just roughly in 2012, just by the numbers, 25,000 arrests in a year, 14,000 federal indictments, and 1,147 missing children located. Budget this last year is a cool $8.3 billion. Pocket change, right? Okay. In addition to our investigations, the Bureau also goes out and does response and to support local agencies. Just an example, 2 days ago, we were called out to Junction City and we're assisting them with some objects that were found in a home. A person had been building improvised explosives devices and had been arrested over the weekend trying to use one. And we assisted them when they went into the house to do the search with our bomb technicians and our hazardous evidence response team, trying to make sure that they weren't put in danger and the right people, the technicians, were there to help out and advise the local authorities. So evidence response team, these are the folks you'll see, like if you saw the Boston bombing, that are running around in the white suits up there, collecting every last bit of evidence. These are the folks who, it's amazing what they can do, what they can find. And it's an extra duty of agents. So an agent will be an investigator, and in addition to that, they'll be assigned, or they'll have asked to be assigned to the evidence response team. These can actually be deployed nationwide, worldwide. If we have an embassy bombing or something overseas, they'll send evidence response team over to help collect the evidence in that local area with the concurrence of the local authorities to actually find the perpetrators. Our hazardous evidence response team used to be called the hazmat team. Basically, their job is to go in and deal with weapons of mass destruction, to look at anthrax attacks, to look at people who are trying to make use ricin and weaponize it, those sort of things. So they are our domestic response to that, the group that goes in, controls that, gathers evidence so that those people who are making it can be prosecuted. Well, we're going the wrong direction here. Sorry. Technology. Or end user. Okay. Special agent bomb technicians are great. There are bomb teams on the local level throughout the state of Kansas. This area, I believe, is covered by one with the Kansas Highway Patrol. They have bomb technicians actually based in the Hayes area. Every bomb technician in the United States in a law enforcement agency actually is trained by and certified by the FBI. That's the only way to become a bomb technician, to respond to calls in the United States. Not the military does their own thing, but as far as being, if you're a Johnson County police officer or whatever else, and you're going to be a bomb tech, that's the only way to do it. And they're very choosy about who goes into that program and the number of teams. They also come out, they help with post-blast investigations also, trying to find out the evidence, trying to figure out what kind of explosive was used and where it may have come from. And we also have our regional special weapons teams, SWAT teams, that they're more in support of our operations, our investigations if we have to make arrests or go in and serve a search warrant. And on the national level, the hostage rescue team, which is, they are the elite domestic counterterrorism group. They exist to go in, do awesome things, drop through skylights and go off helicopters and do stuff like that, dive into the ocean and then come back out. So they're kind of the special operations unit of U.S. law enforcement. So to do all this, the FBI needs help. They can't just do it within those few people they have, and they have to have the contacts within the local law enforcement. So one of the ways it's been very successful with that is to create task forces. The most widely known is the Joint Terrorism Task Force that I'm on. We also have Violent Gangs Task Forces, also called Safe Streets Task Force. We have one active in Topeka right now. There's Crimes Against Children's Task Forces, Cybersecurity Task Forces, and then the Regional Computer Forensics Laboratories. They exist to support local agencies who are, say, doing child exploitation investigations. They can come in and actually take apart a computer, get the information out of it, and help gather the evidence that's needed. Okay, so what's the JTTF? Joint Terrorism Task Force is a partnership between federal agencies, not just the FBI, all federal law enforcement agencies and some Department of Defense agencies, the state and local law enforcement, okay? We're working together to stop terrorism. What I like to say is we try to work left of boom, okay? Boom is when the event happens. Boom is when bad things happen. We want to work before that, left of it. We don't want to be in the response phase to the right. We would most likely really want to be out there trying to prevent an act from ever happening in the first place. That's a little different than normal law enforcement, right? Normally, as a police officer, you go to work and someone calls 911 and says, hey, my house just got broken into, or my car got broken into, and you respond. Or a company says, hey, someone just stole $1 million from us. More responsive. There is some proactive in law enforcement. We get into street crime or people calling 911, but a lot of that's more reactive. This is more preventative. Our Joint Terrorism Task Forces today, there's 103 across the country with about 4,500 members. And there's 55 federal agencies and more than 500 local and state agencies. You may go, where in the world did they come up with 55 agencies? There are federal law enforcement agencies I didn't even know existed. Anyone ever heard of TIGTA? The Treasury Inspector General's, I can't remember what it's, for tax administration? I can't remember. Anyway, they have special agents that do, basically they're the internal folks for the Treasury Department. So, as I was saying before, our mission is to detect terrorism, hopefully before it happens, to identify anyone who might be involved in it, to go through and disrupt. And disruption may be one of different ways. We may actually go and arrest someone, or we may be able to break up the communications. We may be able to shed light on an organization that's trying to do something from a foreign country. And if we can, then dismantle that organization and hopefully prosecute the offenders. So what does our day kind of go up by? What do I do on a daily basis? A lot of times it's tips from people like you. It's just, a lot of our stuff comes from people. They just say, hey, something's not quite right. This guy has moved in next door. He's keeping irregular hours. He's not here. I'm seeing weird things coming out of the house. And we get a call. Okay, 99% of the time, we'll all agree that it turns out to be nothing. But it's that 1% or 1/10% that actually leads to an investigation that we're looking for. So a lot of what we do is just sift through a lot of information and look for the golden nugget in there to actually bring forth. I'll leave it at that. So when we find something, we're actually gathering evidence, hopefully making arrests. We do provide security for special events, so a lot of our folks got to go out to the Super Bowl coming up this next week to help out with that. We conduct training for local agencies. We come out and speak, obviously, like this. Collect and share intelligence with different groups. Local law enforcement, State Fusion Center is a great partner for us for intelligence purposes. And then we respond to threats and incidents, like I was talking about Junction City the other day. There was Onega the other day also. When we have reports of threats that are actually a credible threat, we'll go out and stand by. Most times those turn out to be nothing also, but we're there on the ground ready to kind of act and take it forward. We can't, if we're not there, we can't act. I don't know how to put that better. If we're standing back and just waiting for that call to happen and we're not leaning forward, we're going to lose a lot of time and could lose evidence. So it's better to be forward leaning and be out there. Okay, so where did the JTTF come from? Well, back in the late 70s, what they found in New York City was investigating bank robberies and armored truck heists, and the FBI was also, because it was kind of a concurrent jurisdiction thing. Well, what was happening was they were basically bumping into each other on their investigations. And they found that actually the people who were committing these robberies were connected to terrorist groups, domestic terrorist groups, international terrorist groups. They were using this as a way to raise money for their cause. So out of this idea, and as that was going through, they created a bank robbery task force, and later in 1980 formed a joint terrorism task force in New York. Originally 20 members, 10 NYPD, 10 special agents. Second JTTF was formed in Chicago, and it was dealing specifically with FALN and some of the bombings that were going on there. And then prior to 2001, there were 35 JTTF stood up across the United States. Many of these were in response to the 1993 and 1995 events, 93 being the first World Trade Center bombing, and 95 being the Murrah building bombing in Oklahoma City. The Heart of America Joint Terrorism Task Force that we have here based out of Kansas City was formed in 1997. We have 2 squads in Kansas City. One handles just domestic terrorism, one handles just international. They have enough work in that area to do that. When we get out into the RAs, like I am, we're kind of a jack of all trades. Take whatever comes in, investigate it, and take it all the way through to the end. Hopefully, if it's a real case and it's a real tip, take it all the way to actually getting someone in cuffs, getting them into jail, getting them before a court, and prosecuting them. This is just an example of some of the agencies that are involved. A lot of different agencies just in our task force here in Kansas and western Missouri. So task force officers like myself, we're basically just seconded by our agency. We're just put on loan to the Bureau. We're supervised by them. We get, we're sworn in as U.S. Marshals to have national jurisdiction. We receive security clearances. We have full access to the FBI. Really, they treat us just like one of their own. And other than like the color of an ID card, our folks basically act the same as the other agents. And many times, one of the things that's brought on that we contribute is, like myself, I'm an actually 22-year law enforcement officer, because I was a sheriff's deputy before I was a trooper. So we bring that experience with us when we come in. Many of the agents that we have, because of the way the Bureau hires and their hiring process and their retirement requirements, they don't have a lot of time on, or they don't have that background in law enforcement. They may have come here from El Paso, Texas, or from Chicago, and they don't have any local contacts whatsoever, and we have that. So when we were able to go to Junction City the other day, I was able to introduce the agent with me to the police chief and the sheriff, because I already had those relationships built with them back in the days when they were sergeants and deputies. I'm going to skip that. So we'll kind of back away from the JTF a little bit, and I'll talk just in general. I'm going to kind of have to lay some foundation for my information later. I think you all agree that the best decision, the best information you can act on and make a decision on, or come to a belief, is good information, is a wide range of information. Myself, when I read the news anymore, I tend to read at least 2 or 3 news articles about the same thing, because I don't trust anymore that there's just a single person who doesn't have some sort of spin on things. We've become so fractured in our media that we have to kind of choose and try to be well-informed. I know it takes time, but if you're going to be really well-informed about something, you have to do that. So this is going to kind of lead up to the issue of communications and privacy. So there are 3 types of investigations we do. We do threat assessments, we move on to preliminary investigations, and what are called full investigations. All of these are very, very tightly controlled. You have to apply to open any investigation into any person. There's a big, thick book. I didn't bring one today. It's bigger than the Bible. It's a big, huge book called DIOG. It's a Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide that tells you on each step of the way what you can do and what you can't do. Can I go out and pull trash out of someone's yard at the curb on this investigation? It'll tell me, yes, on this one you can do that. No, you can't do it on this one. Can I do a grand jury subpoena for records? Yes, on this type of one you can. No, on this one you can't. And if you do, you have to have permission from this person, this person, this person. It's all very scripted. There's a lot of oversight, a lot of bureaucracy, but the great thing is it protects you and protects the public, because all that oversight is in place. There can't be any misuse. Our investigative principles that run everything, number 1 is to protect rights and liberties. Okay. Number 2, the investigation has to have a criminal, a national security, or a foreign intelligence purpose. If it doesn't have one of those things, it will not happen. When we do an investigation, when we're making our plans, everything, we have to use the least intrusive means to gather information from anything, right, that does not compromise the investigation. Obviously, the least intrusive means, right off the bat, maybe I just walk up to you and say, hey, what's going on with these emails to Yemen? You know, well, it may not just be, you know, ISIS, I see you like ISIS, okay, great. You know, that sort of thing. That may be really least intrusive, but it pretty much compromises anything I'm looking at, right? I'm amazed at the number of people who get involved and love to throw things out on social media about what they're doing. A lot of our tips from the public come from people on Facebook or wherever else going, there's this guy and he's posting some crazy stuff out there. I think you guys ought to look at him. And it's amazing what people will do. They just don't, I don't know. It's if anyone knows why, you can let me know, because I haven't figured it out quite yet. So we use the most appropriate and lawful means to achieve our investigative goals. We're very careful. They have attorneys, things go up and down. It's amazing how it works. I had no idea before I got into this how things were set up. So I think the question we're really here today to answer, and it kind of moves past that, is are technology, privacy, and public safety on a collision course? We live in just an amazing time, okay? I'm going to date myself here. When I was in your shoes in college, my university had just put the internet into our dorm rooms. And we walked in and there's this computer in there. My roommate and I had both brought our own computers along, so we quickly disconnected their computer, threw it in the corner, and never used that internet thing. Never used it all 4 years of college. It was there. I remember people who were talking about they were texting or they were messaging with people, their boyfriend or whatever, off at whatever university somewhere else, and we're thinking, well, okay, that sounds great. I don't know why you'd want to do it, but go ahead, you know. It's just amazing how far things have come. I love what Dr. Dr. Carlson said. When he was talking, and I think I'm going to paraphrase you. There was a time when you didn't know things. You couldn't just look it up. If you didn't know something, you just didn't know it. You just couldn't go out. It just wasn't there. We're in a different time.
Library.
Well, you go to the library, but I'll tell you, I'm one of those people, I'll even sit, I'm watching a TV show. How many of you do this? I watch a TV show, got the iPad next to me. They'll bring up some thought, some little bit of information. I'll go, I wonder what that is. Pause the TV, that's pretty cool too. Pause the TV, grab the iPad and look it up and see what they're talking about, or what, I'm a History Channel buff too, so that's really bad. I look up all kinds of stuff. But we didn't have that ability before. We still had encyclopedias and stuff, okay? All right, this is not a new problem. We have struggled as a nation with technology from the very beginning, from way back, okay? We have our Constitution built so that it can kind of take these into consideration, but it takes a little while for us to adapt. Unfortunately, and I'll talk more about this later, what we've seen is technology is going at such a great rate that our court and judicial system is unable to keep up anymore, okay? So we all the way back to the whole idea of wiretapping. Why do you call it wiretapping? Do we actually walk into a room and tap some wires together and pull out a little phone thing and listen to people? No. What we have, it goes all the way back to the Civil War where as they were doing telegraph signals, the enemy would actually climb a pole, take out, tap into the wires, and listen to what was going on, okay? Goes all the way back to those days. You start seeing laws all the way back to the 1860s about intercepting communications at the state levels. This is where you even started seeing basic codes and ciphers being used by the forces to try to keep their telegraph signals secret. So then we have the telephone come along. Very simple. Still have these two wires that go from a house to a central office where there's an operator sitting there, or later where there's a central office. Those two wires come in, they're easy for us to identify. If we get a lawful order, tap into it and get the information that we need, right? Well, my dad actually worked for the phone company, so I can remember as a kid going in to the central office. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Central office where all the phones come in? Anyone ever do a tour back in the day? That was probably the noisiest room. It was a big room full of equipment. Noisiest room you were in, because as you dialed the phone, it was sending an electrical impulse in, and it was mechanically actually switching your call to wherever it was going. It was crazy. So 1928 is the first time that the Supreme Court actually goes through and says, well, are wiretaps legal or not? Up to that point, there was no real law on it. Was it? Was it not? What was going on? So 1928, sorry, Olmsted case. Olmsted was a bootlegger. And so what they did was Treasury agents went out to a phone pole near his house and they set up a device where they could listen in real time to what he was saying over the telephone. Okay? So Olmsted says, and as a result of that, they actually convict him for violations of the Prohibition Act. That's part of the reason that they had to arrest him and prosecute him. So he says that that was a violation of his Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. Well, what the Supreme Court at that time said was there was, where are we at here? Since there was no physical search or seizure of his person or his property, that it was fine. Okay? So as long as you didn't break into somebody's house and tap their phone inside the house, as long as you didn't go into some sort of an area that's protected, there was no need for a warrant or a subpoena or anything else. You could have wiretapping wherever. Okay? That was the law. That was the law of the land until 1967. So in 1967, this guy Katz comes along. And Katz is a bookie. He's out there running his gambling business. And he's a smart bookie. He knows that they will tap phones. So what he does is he uses a phone booth. So the police find this out, and they place a device on the outside of the phone booth, the public phone booth, that listens to what's going on inside that. As a result of the information they get from that, they are actually able to arrest him and convict him. Okay? He says, whoa, wait a minute, I had an expectation of privacy. In this case, the court said, yes, you did. That's a public place. However, you had an expectation of privacy there, and you had an expectation, a reasonable expectation, that you would not be subjected to unwarranted governmental intrusion. Okay, good decision. Good decision. So, wiretapping out. So as a result of that, next year Congress creates what's called the Title III. You'll hear people talk about a Title III wiretap to this day. We use Title III. And what Title III does, it establishes the procedures that local, state, federal law enforcement officers have to use in order to get a warrant to listen to communications, real-time communications on a device, okay? It requires, among other things, in order to do this, the warrant comes out, you serve the warrant, you start listening. Every call that you listen to, as the call comes in, it has to be listened to in real time. As you listen to it, you have to decide whether it's pertinent to your case or not. If it's somebody calling to order a pizza or someone calling their doctor, you have to actually stop the tape at that time and the call goes on. It can only be pertinent information. And it's only for a certain amount of time. The whole thing is observed by a judge. They see the take on it. They decide what's going on. And after it's done, if they use any information on it in order to charge someone or convict them, they have to let them know that there was a wiretap and there was a warrant in place. Okay? So, just after that, they start going to this, well, is a warrant needed for everything? What is a warrant needed for? So the court gets into the issue of what's content and non-content. And I'm sorry we're having to go through all this, but without an understanding of this, we just can't really talk about the privacy issues later, because it all comes back to some of these. And basically what the court then said was, we have no expectation of privacy in financial transaction records held by our banks. Okay? 1979, no expectation of privacy considering routinely kept telephone provider information for our billing purposes. So what's this? This is all what we call non-content now. And under the laws currently, with a grand jury subpoena or a national security letter, this information can be released to law enforcement based on that without a warrant. So that is what we call like a trap and trace or a pen register. That's every number called to and from a phone, when it was called, the location of that phone, who the subscriber is. That is all that can be secured by law enforcement with a subpoena. Okay? Same thing with all your all our bank transactions. That's all there too.
Is the judge involved in issuing a subpoena?
No, no. The U.S. Attorney's Office issues a subpoena. So it's not just me issuing it. I have to ask permission. It still has to go through different levels of everything else. It's not that simple, but there is no warrant involved. Okay, so Title III is running along and they hit a hitch. Title III is great for criminals, but what happens when we're chasing spies and terrorists? So we end up with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA. Everyone's heard of FISA in the news, plenty, okay? And what it does is it establishes this procedure where you can get a secret warrant through a court that's set up in Washington, D.C. called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. All the things it deals with, all its warrants, all that's secret, okay? But it's the same process. You still have to write your warrant, write all your applications. It goes to, for example, for us, goes to an attorney within the FBI here who approves it. Our supervisors approve it. It goes to FBI headquarters. They play with it, change it, do other things. It goes beyond them to the Department of Justice. Their attorneys play with it, do all this other stuff, and then finally it ends up before the court. Okay. All right. I think I got ahead of myself. So who can we actually listen to on that? We have to have a target of surveillance that is a foreign power or an agent of a foreign power. We don't have to show that a crime is imminent, okay? But, let's see. Yeah. Important stuff. Surveillance can't just be based on First Amendment activities. In 2004, this has been amended over time and renewed in the Patriot Act. There's all kinds of little pieces of this that move forward, are on a period where they sunset and they have to be renewed. So you'll hear a lot of talk about this. But in 2004, when they did it, they put this lone wolf provision in. And those are the people who are homegrown violent extremists. For example, The people who have no connection to Al-Qaeda or to another group across, but what they're doing is they're going online, they're meeting people. For one reason or another, they're grabbing this revolutionary idea that they should hurt Americans. And it allows us now to also bring them in to this act and use this against them to intercept communications between them and Al-Qaeda or whatever group they're talking to. But it has to be a foreign power. Okay? This isn't used domestically. This is used with communications with some sort of foreign group, some sort of foreign terrorist group, foreign country, spies, that sort of thing. Okay? All right. So comes 1994. Remember I talked about that really cool switching station where everything was clicking inside there? Technology started catching up with switching, and we have digital switching, digital offices. So what happens is, suddenly, it's not so simple as going in and grabbing two pairs of wires and clipping into them. Now you have this cloud computing system that's bringing in all these phone lines, and then it's switching them within. So what this did is actually, and stands to this day, requires the companies that provide communications, telecommunications, and their equipment suppliers to build into their system from the very beginning a way that if they are served with a search warrant by a judge, that they have to be able to intercept communications. Okay? And that was expanded later to VoIP and to broadband communication providers.
Can I ask
Sure.
because I think that's a really important, interesting point. So when you say, okay, so these are private, like telephony companies, right?
Yeah, like
Okay.
private telephone companies.
And so the law requires that when they create or use technology to, offer phone support and that kind of thing, the government requires them to include a way to track all that information and to tap any of the communication, so that if provided a warrant, the government has the ability to do it.
Yeah, if a judge provides a warrant based on probable cause that says the government can intercept that, they have to have a way built into their system from the get-go to do that. Okay? That's called CALEA. All right. So now we get into the meat of this. I want to talk to you more about the impact of emerging technology upon public safety. My goal today is not to tell you what to think or what to do. It's to urge all of you to actually think about this and to participate in a discussion of it. Okay? All the laws of this nation, everything we do is based on input from our citizens. We have a great country. Okay? Yes, we've hit our issues over time, but I still think that when you look at governments in the United States and different ways of governing, we by far have the most freedoms and the most input of any other design that I can find. It's not perfect. I don't know if you can find a perfect system, but ours is the closest, I think, to perfect that we can get. So generally, evidence has been in one of two forms: a physical item, so like a bullet that we pick up at a crime scene, or a statement from a witness who actually has seen the event happen. So that wasn't really hard for us to collect. It was just out there. We would go out there to the crime scene, pick it up, put it in a bag, bring it to court. Since the advent of computers, this has all changed, and a great deal of our evidence is now in a digital format. Digital evidence is powerful and very compelling. Some examples include GPS data, showing when and where kidnapped victims have traveled, voice calls, emails, and chat messages indicating a criminal intent, and financial records revealing the proceeds of fraud. Because of the power of digital evidence, investigators go to great lengths to obtain and analyze it, prosecutors love it, and juries readily understand it. Law enforcement has been keeping up with advancing technology, though it's been difficult, and officers are becoming skilled at finding and collecting digital evidence on computers and cell phones. The legal system, however, has had difficulty keeping up with the enforcement in recognizing these new techniques. I'm going to make a really important point here. Okay? I will tell you right now that I believe, as an American, that we should not trust. We should all be skeptical. We should all be skeptical of government power. And I'm not the only one to say that. FBI Director Comey came out and publicly said the same thing. It's American to be skeptical of our government. Our government was based on that from the very beginning. Our founders knew about the saying that power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, in our own state, as an example, when our state founders formed formed a law enforcement agency at the state level. They didn't form a state police. Okay? I work for, and I'm a member of the Highway Patrol. It's one of two law enforcement agencies at the state level, both formed at the same time. The other is the Bureau of Investigation. The Highway Patrol reports to the governor. The Bureau of Investigation reports to the Attorney General. One in the executive branch, one in the judicial branch. Okay? And that's to protect powers. I'm already getting going late here, aren't I? Apologize. On a national level, we also set up different branches, and we made sure that there was a system of checks and balances in place for all. I'm going to skip a little of this and move forward. So today there are countless providers, countless networks. As we talked earlier, it was very easy just to simply clip into lines. Now we're faced with countless means of communicating electronically. We use laptops, smartphones, tablets, take them to school and work, from the baseball field to Starbucks, over many networks, and using apps that may pop up last week and be here for 2 weeks and gone. Unfortunately, those criminals who are trying to victimize us are using these same systems. The bad guys are using the same devices, the same networks, and the same apps to make plans, choose targets, and cover up what they're doing. If a suspected criminal is in his car and he switches from cellular coverage over to Wi-Fi, we may be out of luck in keeping up with what they're saying. If he switches from one app to another, or from cell service to VoIP, we may lose him. Okay? We do not have the ability to jump from system to system. The bad guys know this. Let's step aside here for a second. This may predate you also. In 1989, there was a movie called Enemy of the State with Will Smith. And in it, Will Smith's this just normal guy, and he suddenly gets caught up in this big government conspiracy, and rogue agents are after him. And these rogue agents can listen to any phone immediately. They can tap into any camera system and anything. They can retask spy satellites to follow them around. It's Hollywood, folks. That's not reality, okay? Some folks I've met from CIA said they liked those movies. They like seeing what they supposedly can do compared to what they really can do. One of the big issues lately has been the issue of gag orders. That if someone receives a subpoena, if you're a business and you receive a subpoena for one of your customers' information, should you be able to tell that customer that the FBI is looking at them? Well, there are usually what we call gag orders put on those documents, and that's very important to our investigations. What that does is stop people, our investigative subjects, from knowing that we're looking at them, from them fleeing, from them getting rid of evidence, or for them even to trigger their event. If they know they're going to be caught, they may do their bad thing now instead of waiting. There is a way now that those organizations can actually go to court and appeal that gag order, and that's the best way to do that if they think that it's been put in place. But that's another thing that has to go so many different levels of authorization to be put in place that they weren't able to find any intentional misuses of that when they did an audit. We talked about CALIA. Encryption. Let's talk really quick about encryption. So, is everyone familiar with what Apple and Google, their movement to just default encrypt everything, right? This means that the companies themselves won't be able to unlock phone, laptops, and tablets to reveal photos, documents, email, and recordings stored within. Both the companies are run by good people, and they're responding to basically what they perceive as a market demand. But the price that they're leading us is one we shouldn't go to without careful thought and debate as a country. It's not just a technical issue, encryption is, it's also a marketing ploy. But it's going to have very serious consequences upon law enforcement and national security at all levels. And the United States is not alone in that concern. As you saw after some of the recent terrorist attacks, you see the governments of France and Britain also talking about that in the use of encryption. Sophisticated criminals will use these devices to actually victimize us. They know it exists. It's the equivalent of getting a search warrant and finding a closet in a house that can't be opened or a safe that can't be cracked. There's a misconception that we're trying to ask for a lawful intercept system that includes a so-called back door, and that's not true. What we want is a front door. What we want is a way that's transparent, lawful, to go into programs with the advice and oversight of a court to get the information we need to protect the United States. The cloud has several different issues. For those that are familiar, and I'm going to hit this a little bit because I don't think a lot of people understand. When we execute law enforcement warrants, we go to a judge. So if I want to execute a warrant, I go to Topeka, put it before a judge, my application with the U.S. attorney, and that judge sets the warrant that is in our area. We have to tell him there's a physical location for something, like a filing cabinet, right? And a lot of times that's how the judge and that's how the attorneys understand computers. That there's a hard drive inside this computer that's like a filing cabinet, and the files are there inside it. Well, when we start talking about the cloud, the user usually doesn't even know where that filing cabinet exists. It may exist in different places for different information they're uploading. They're saving this information, they're buying a service. It may be in a foreign country for all they know. All they know is that when they go on and they want their information, they're able to get to it. But for law enforcement to try to find that and get a proper warrant is very, very difficult. Another problem that we have are the issues. I talked about foreign storage. Data overseas, we have to use the legal process in that country. And there are countries that are unfriendly to our government that are actually acting as a haven for a lot of these groups to operate. So in one example, they served a search warrant here in the United States on a computer, but they found information directly linking it to data in a foreign computer system. So the agents took that opportunity before that was destroyed to get that information also. And when they went to court, the court said, yeah, that's good, you did good work, that's fine, there wasn't a violation, use that. However, as a result of that, that foreign country actually charged that agent with hacking and demanded that they be extradited for breaking their laws. Now, that agent hasn't gone anywhere, but it just kind of shows some of the problems that we have out there with that. Virtualization I want to talk about really quick too, because it's relational databases, and then we'll probably tie this up. Virtualization is when we use a single computer to run multiple operating systems. So you use a virtual machine on your own computer or anything else. Data is put out to different places on the cloud, but unless that virtual machine is actually operating on whatever system, you're not able to grab that information. It does not actually congregate unless that is running. So it's virtual, it's very difficult for law enforcement to go through and find that also. Relational databases are even more bizarre. I like to call this, the analogy that works for me on this is a coffee vending machine. You go up to a coffee vending machine, you push a button, and you get a mocha latte, right? And maybe not, maybe they don't have those anymore. But that's how I remember. You'd walk up, push a button, and what you ordered came out. It mixed it inside and came. And what you got was what you asked for. However, if I were to do a search warrant on the inside of that and was searching for mocha latte, what would I find? I'd find coffee grounds, I'd find water, I'd find milk, I'd find some different powders, different things that are mixed together, but I wouldn't be able to find that latte, right? So when we deal with relational databases, it's the same way. Information is kept based on where it is, and then it's brought together just for a certain purpose. So it's very difficult to search for also. I have a bunch of case issues and stuff like that, but I know we're short on time, and I want to open it up to questions. I think that'd be good. So, Bill.
I'll start off with Mark. More and more people are using the cloud, and the fact that you bring out the the foreign storage. How safe is the cloud now?
Well, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, how safe is anything? I mean, how many of us when we start a service like that and there's a 25-page user agreement, how many of you sit and read that? Okay. Who owns that data? Do you still even retain ownership of it, or does whoever you're uploading it to now retain, and are they allowed to keep copies of it? I mean, we've dealt with that with some of the Facebook issues, right? You throw a picture up on Facebook, who owns it? Do you still have control of that?
Facebook owns the pictures.
That's right. Part of that agreement. So, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Especially when some of these countries, we don't really know where that data is going. You have no idea if it's going to a country that's unfriendly to us, a country that really wants to get into your own systems. Folks, every one of you is a target for foreign governments who are wanting information on the United States. Why? I assume all of you have an EDU account of some sort, right? They can break into your little EDU account and through that use social engineering to find other information. And from that, make other jumps and leaps through and actually get into where they're stealing the information of this university, the stuff that you've worked very hard for, maybe things, patented information, and that puts them at an advantage over us. Okay? So just be aware that every one of us has a piece in this pie. Every one of us has a place in this fight. Okay? Go ahead.
How big is Facebook for monitoring terrorism?
How big is Facebook for monitoring terrorism?
Because I can't just see like the FBI agent on Facebook just looking at somebody's picture.
Oh, no. We do not. Okay, let me put it this way. I'm not aware of anything where we are actually just sitting out there sifting through Facebook. Okay? What happens in my experience here is that people like you will have a friend or an acquaintance, or you'll be on some page, maybe a group page, and you'll see someone just throwing out crazy rhetoric, violence. Okay? We're all, hey, First Amendment, great stuff. I like to be able to say what I want to say when I want to say it too. Then where's the line on that? When you start advocating violence, when you start planning violence, when you start doing that sort of thing, you've crossed a line, right? You start making threats, violent threats against others. And that's really where we start seeing, and we get reports like that. And unfortunately, some of them actually turn into things, which is just crazy. Why a bad guy would actually go on there and spout out what they want to do. I guess I don't know.
So before you said you're not looking for a secret back door.
That's
You're looking
correct.
for a front door.
Yes.
Okay. So you have a phone system or an email system. Like I know the FBI and the CIA, I mean, they work with Google, the NSA, the FBI, to try and figure out if there's a way to do it. And so they go to Google and say, we want a way to get into it. At first, that all sounds safe and good because that's all above board. But earlier, you were talking about the FISA court. If our big protection is that you will have to get a warrant, meaning the government will have to prove to a judge that there's a legitimate reason to go through my email. But the FISA court is by definition secret. I don't know that you're getting a warrant. I don't challenge the warrant. I don't know until much later that it even existed. What is the value of?
You may never know it existed.
Right. So what? So then, maybe I guess as in your
So
experience,
the FISA
how do we trust?
The FISA is a very small piece of this, and it's only dealing with foreign terrorism, foreign espionage. Okay, the FISA court stuff. There has to be a foreign tie and a foreign power involved in that. So that is going before judge. You know, we rarely. I don't see it used much. Really, you're going to see the Title III, which goes through the whole other process much more. But even then, they still, with a Title III, you can have a Title III warrant for that same material. You still have to have that access. So I guess, I'm sorry, maybe I'm lost track
I guess
of where
I'm
you're-
asking just in general, as people who might one day be affected by a warrant. Not that any of you are, trying to do anything wrong, but since you don't know, right? If the connection is that you like a comment on somebody's Facebook post, and then later on somebody gives you a tip that that person, which has nothing to do with you, likes and comments on something about ISIS or something like that. So the FBI legitimately looks into it and whatever. So if the big recourse is, don't worry, we have a system where you have to go get a warrant and a judge and there's oversight. But if that entire process can be secret, and what makes it foreign can be kind of loose sometimes. I mean, not even because it's evil, but just because like the FBI doesn't know yet, or the connection could be 2 people removed or something like that. How can you reassure us that a secret court system is going to actually look out for us?
From what I've seen, the oversight involved is amazing.
So maybe you could just
you have to
explain what
fight.
it is.
You have to fight through a process basically to get a FISA warrant. Very, very difficult. And they look at that information. If a person is charged and it goes to court, a lot of times that information is declassified and brought out. The problem we have is this foreign connection gets really strange. When we start dealing with foreign governments and foreign powers, one of the problems we have is, let's say that we have found a way to listen to a foreign group's communication. We have an in somehow with that, okay, and we're being provided a feed for that. If that information gets out that we know that and have that tape, we will lose the whole group. We may have taken down the one piece of their puzzle, but we've lost everybody else. there is so much oversight on that. I understand what you're saying, and I don't like the idea of secret any more than anyone else does, but I don't know what a better system there is. If someone comes up with a better way to do that, that'd be great. But we have to be able to protect ourselves and protect our assets that may even be human. We may have people over there that we're looking at, and if we get the information and it gets out to the bad guys, that someone could die. So, I just don't know what better system there is than what they've set up. And that's part of this discourse. If there's a better system, we as Americans get to talk about it, get to come up with ideas and propose it. So.
Sorry.
I just had kind of a discussion point, I guess, or it's not really a question, as much as maybe a house statement. Going back to what you said about the expectation of privacy, that the law has typically given us as a society as much privacy as we behave like we expect to get. What do you think, and then you're speaking through a law enforcement kind of lens. I teach some technology, constitution, law stuff over in the Department of Informatics, and one of the things I remind my students a lot is there is something that we as society, a lot of times, like, to the question of are things in the cloud secure? Well, really, it's on us to evaluate who we're giving our data to and whether we engage in a relationship with that entity. And if we expect privacy, then maybe we should evaluate our relationship and our giving of data and who we give it to, because we have certain kinds of protections that are provided by law, but protections as it relates to us, like there's certain things that you can't find out about me, but as it relates to somebody else being able to make that observation, I'm protected less. Would you say that's there's really privacy as it relates to governmental intrusion, and then there's privacy as it relates to anybody else who sees what you're doing.
Exactly. And
don't run around without your clothes on.
That is my area of concern, and we spoke about that when I'm there. So this is me speaking as Trooper Engholm now, in more of a private industry. There's all kinds of data being aggregated out there. Your information is being sold. Your information is gold to some people. You go out there and sign up for a free magazine subscription, or you sign up for a contest and you put your information in, that data is being sold. They're making money on it. We had that happen not too long ago. People were going door to door selling magazines, and we had complaints that they were asking all kinds of information about what the people in the house did, their ages, whether they were in law enforcement or not, all these different things, and it caused concerns that that information was being taken somewhere and sold. And that's what they were doing. They might have been doing their magazine sales, but at the same time, they were selling the information from their door-to-door contacts to another company.
I often find it's interesting that in my classes, students come with this, they want to talk about the NSA, and they want to talk about things that are like, man, they are in our business. And we listen and we discuss and we talk about where that might be true or where that might be suspect, but then we also flesh out, it's like, do you realize all the other things that you do that really, their intrusion shouldn't maybe be as worrisome as what you freely do and give up of yourself and about yourself to places that aren't regulated by anything.
So, great point, because there was an article just the other day. Did anyone see the article that came out and they were decrying the DEA's system where they were taking images of license plates at the border and sharing that information with law enforcement? So there's a system in place that takes this. As people are driving down the road, they go past a camera, it captures that license plate. It's put into a national database system that DEA runs with Customs and Border Patrol. That information is kept for 6 months. It's secured. It can only people who have a need to know and can show why they're going into it can get the information. Okay? And people are concerned about that. Okay, I get that, but there are controls in place. Now I'm going to step over into the private realm. There is a company that has millions upon millions of your license plates in their database out there, and they sell that information. And they hire contractors to drive around your town with license plate readers and grab that information, okay? It's a business. So where you've been, where your car's been, it's all out there. And what they're moving into now is actually using those same cameras for facial recognition. So if it sees you walk down the street, it grabs your picture, right, as you're walking, because it's already looking at the other stuff. Technology is moving along. So next week you're walking down another street, the camera takes your picture again, and their system starts going through and actually figuring out where you are and who you are. And that information is being sold commercially. It's out there right now. All right? Go show you, because they've actually showed us this stuff. I mean, it's there.
Well, and I guess I
So,
kind of sometimes point out to my students, or we look at some cases and we kind of delve into it as much as we can, or how, as much as it makes sense to it. Again, reminding that the time-tested standard is, well, what was the, even going back to the phone booth case, they looked at, well, the guy in the phone booth, did he behave in a way that expected his illegal conversation, or his conversation about an illegal action of his, did he still behave like he thought he was doing something privately? And it goes back to that expectation of privacy, and we as a society just increasingly behave like we don't expect privacy, but then we sometimes say, wait a second, what are you doing in my business? And it's kind of us behaving in a dichotomous way.
yeah, there's no control over that information. They can keep it as long as they want. They can do with it whatever they want. They've collected it in some public place. So,
That sounds like a central office.
yeah.
Who are the major consumers of this information?
Private investigators, just companies who are looking at marketing. They use data now for marketing purposes. It's just
Right.
amazing to try to market products specifically into a neighborhood based on your wants.
Yeah.
You fill out a little interest
Well,
card.
credit card
next thing
companies have
that
been doing
pops up.
something like that for
It
25
has,
years.
yes. That was the start of it.
Yeah.
And it has just grown to encompass huge amounts, so. Yeah, go ahead.
So, first of all, so I know it's 1 and a couple people have to go. So first off, before everybody takes off and runs away, I wanted us to thank Officer Engholm for coming by. You don't have to leave. You can still stay. We're still here to talk and answer questions, so you don't have to go. Keep going. But I just wanted to make sure we all had a chance to say thank you for the roof falls on us or something. So anyway, but feel free if you have more questions, please, absolutely.
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
going to move to the back of the room. Students of mine that need to sign this, please do so.